Ready to get it? Ready to get it? Ready to get it? Chapter 10. Chapter 10. Agency, appointment, and authority of agents. Agency and appointment, authority of agents. 182. Agent and principal defined. An agent is a person employed to do any act for another. Who? Or to represent another in dealing with third persons. The person for whom such act is done or who is so represented is called the principal. Huh. 183. Who may employ agent? Any person who is of the age of majority according to the law to which he is subject and who is of sound mind may employ an agent. 184. Who may be an agent? As between the principal and third persons, any person may become an agent. As between the principal and third persons, any person may become an agent, but no person who is not of the age of majority and sound mind can become an agent, so as to be responsible to the principal according to the provisions of that behalf herein contained. 185. Consideration not necessary. No consideration is necessary to create an agency. 186. Agent's authority may be expressed or implied. The authority of an agent may be expressed or implied. 187. Definitions of express and implied. An authority is said to be expressed when it is given by words spoken or written. An authority is said to be implied when it is to be inferred from the circumstances of the case and things spoken or written, or the ordinary course of dealing may be accounted circumstances of the case. 188. Extension of agent's authority. An agent having an authority to do an act has authority do every lawful thing, has authority to do every lawful thing which is necessary in order to do such act. An agent has an authority to carry on a business, has authority to do every lawful thing necessary for the purpose or usually done in the course of conducting such business. 189. Agent's authority in an emergency. An agent has authority in an emergency to do all such acts for the purpose of protecting his principal from loss and would be done by a person or ordinary prudence in his own case under similar circumstances. 190. When agent cannot delegate, an agent cannot lawfully employ another to perform acts which he has expressly or implied undertaken to perform personally, unless by the ordinary custom or trade of sub-agent may, or from the nature or agency, a sub-agent must be employed. 191. Sub-agent defined. A sub-agent is a person employed by and acting under the control of the ordinary agent in the business of the agency. 192. Representation of principal by sub-agent properly appointed. Where a sub-agent is properly appointed, the principal is, so far as regards third persons, represented by the sub-agent and is bound by or responsible for his acts as if he were an agent ordinarily appointed by the principal. Agent's responsibility for sub-agent. The agent is responsible to the principal for the acts of the sub-agent. The sub-agent's responsibility. The sub-agent is responsible for his acts to do to the agent, but not to the principal, except in cases of fraud or willful wrong. Where a subject, I'm gonna read it again. Where a sub agent is properly appointed, the principal is, so far as regards third persons, represented by sub agent and is bound by and responsible for his acts, as if he were an agent ordinary appointed by the principal. Agent's responsibility for sub-agent. The agent is responsible to the principal for the acts of the sub-agent. Sub-agent's responsibility. Sub-agent is responsible for his acts to the agent, but not to the principal, except in case of fraud or willful wrong. 193. Agent's responsibility for sub-agent appointed without authority, where an agent, without having authority to do so, has appointed a person to act as a sub-agent, stands towards such person in the relation of a principal to an agent, and is responsible for his act both to the principal and to third person. The principal is not represented. The principal is not represented by or responsible for the acts of the person so employed, nor is that person responsible to the principal. 194. Relationship between principal and person duly appointed by agent to act in business of agency. When the agency holding an express or implied authority to name another person to act for the principal in the business of the agency has named another person accordingly, such person is not a sub-agent, but an agent for the principal for such part of the business of the agency as is entrusted to him. 195. Agent's duty in naming such person. In selecting such agent for his principal, an agent is bound to exercise the same amount of discretion as a man of ordinary prudence would exercise his own case. And if he does this, he is not responsible to the principal for the act of negligence of the agent so selected. 196. Right of person as to acts done for him without his authority. Effect of ratification. Where acts are done by one person on behalf of another, but without his knowledge or authority, he may elect to ratify or to disown such acts. If he ratifies them, the same effects will follow as if they had been performed by his authority. 197. Ratification may be express or implied. Ratification may be expressed or may be implied in the conduct of a person on whose behalf the acts are done. 198. Knowledge requisite for valid ratification. Knowledge requisite for valid ratification. No valid ratification can be made by a person whose knowledge of the fact of the case is materially defective. 199. Effect of ratifying unauthorized act forming part of a transaction. A person ratifying any unauthorized act done on his behalf ratifies the whole of the transaction of which such act formed a part. 200. Ratification of unauthorized act cannot injure third person. An act done by one person on behalf of another without such other persons authorized, which, if done with authority, would have the effect of subjecting the third person to damages or of terminating any right or interest of a third person, cannot by ratification be made to have such effect. 201. Termination of agency. As agency is terminated by the principal revoking his authority, or by the principal renouncing the business of the agency, or by the business of the agency being completed, or by either the principal or agent dying or becoming of unsound mind, or by the principal being adjudicated and insolvent under the provisions of any act for the time being enforced for the relief of insolvent debtors. 202. Termination of agency, where agent has an interest in subject matter, where agent has himself an interest in the property which forms the subject matter of the agency cannot, in the absence of an express contract, be terminated to the prejudice of such interest. 203. When principal may revoke agent's authority, the principal may, save as is otherwise provided by the last proceeding session, revoke the authority given to his agent at any time before the authority has been exercised so as to bind the principal. 2004 204, my bad. 204. Revocation where authority has been partly exercised. The principal cannot revoke the authority given by his agent after the authority has been partly exercised, so far as regards such acts and obligations as arise from acts already done in the agency. 205. Compensation for revocation by principal or renunciation by agent, where there is an express or complied contract to the agency, should be continued for any period of time. The principal must make compensation to the agent or the agent to the principal, as the case may be, for any provision, revocation, or remuneration, renunciation of the agency without sufficient cause for the purpose for any previous revocation or renunciation of the agency without sufficient cause, where there is an express or implied contract that the agency should be continued for any period of time. The principal must make compensation to the agent or the agent to the principal, as the case may be, for any previous revocation or renunciation of the agency without sufficient cause. 206. Notice of revocation or renunciation. Reasonable notice must be given of such revocation or renunciation. Otherwise, the damage thereby resulting to the principal or the agent, as the case may be, must be made good to the one by the other. 207. Revocation and renunciation may be expressed or implied. Revocation or renunciation may be expressed or may be implied in the conduct of the principal or agent, respectively. Uh, 208. When termination of agent's authority takes effect as to agent and as the third person, the termination of the authority of an agent does not, so far as regards the agent, take effect before it becomes known to him, or as far as regards third persons, before it becomes known to them. 129. Agent's duty on termination of agency by principal's death or insanity. When an agency is terminated by the principal dying or becoming of unsound mind, the agent is bound to take on behalf of the representatives of his late principal all reasonable steps for the protection and preservation of the interests entrusted to him. 210. Termination of sub-agent's authority. The termination of the authority of an agent causes the termination, subject to the rules herein contained regarding the termination of an agent's authority, of the authority of all sub-agents appointed by him. The termination of the authority of an agent caused the termination of the authority of all sub-agents appointed by him. 211. Agent's duty in conducting principal's business. An agent is bound to conduct the business of his principal according to the direction given by the principal, or in the absence of any such directions, according to the custom which prevails in doing business of the same kind at the place where the agent conducts such business. When the agent acts otherwise, if any loss be sustained, he must make it good to his principal, and if any profit occurs, he must account for it. It must count for it. 212. Skill and diligence required for agent. Beep, 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 beep. Beep, 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 beep. The agent. An agent is bound to conduct the business of the agency with as much skill as is generally possessed by persons engaged in similar business, unless the principal has notice of his want of skill. The agent is always bound to act with reasonable diligence and to use such skill as he possesses, and to make compensation to his principal in respect of the direction, consequences of his negligence, want of skill, or misconduct, but not in respect of loss or damage which are directly or remotely caused by such negligence, want of skill, or misconduct. 213. Agent's accounts. Is that your agent's accounts? Or do you have agent's accounts? An agent is bound to render proper accounts to his principal on demand. 214. Agent's duty and communication with principal. It is the duty of an agent. You're just an agent. It is the duty of an agent in cases of difficulty to use all reasonable diligence in communicating with his principal and in seeking to obtain his obstructions. Just take the obstructions. Take the obstructions to the people as my agent, brother. you know? But do your reasonable diligence before communicating with his principal. I'm just playing. 215. Boy, this blunt good. Right to principal when agent deals on his own account in business of agency without principal's consent. Oh, you did it without the consent. Constitutional. If an agent deals on his own account in the business of the agency without first obtaining the consent of his principal and acquainting him with all material circumstances which have come to his own knowledge on the subject, the principal may repudiate the transaction. If the case shows either that any material fact has been dishonestly concealed from him by the agent, or that the dealings of that agent has been disadvantage to him. Why would you want to do that? 216. Principal's right to benefit gained by agent dealing on his own account in business of agency. If an agent without the knowledge of his principal deals in the business 6F of 6F. If an agent without the knowledge of his principal deals in the business of agency on his own account instead of on account of his principal, the principal is entitled to claim from the agent any benefit which may have resulted to him from the transaction. 217. Agent's right to retainer out of sums received on principal's account. An agent may retain out of any sums received on account of the principal in the business of the agency all monies due to him in respect of advances made or expenses properly incurred by him in conducting such business, and also such remuneration as may be payable to him for acting as agent. You're going in as the business, as a piece of paper, birth certificate, certificate of live birth, bond. 218. Agent's duty to pay sums received for a principal, subject to such deductions, the agent is bound to pay to his principal all sums received to his account. About to say his principal account. 219. When agent's remuneration becomes due in the absence of any special contract, payment for the performance of any act is not due to the agent until the completion of such act, but an agent may detain monies received by him on account for a good sold, although the whole of the goods consigned to him for sale may not have been sold, or although the sale may not be actually complete. 220. Agent not entitled to remuneration for business misconducted. An agent who is guilty of misconduct in the business and the agency is not entitled to any remuneration in respect of that part of the business which he has misconducted. It's all in good faith and with clean hands. 221. Agents lien on principal property. Yes, indeed. In the absence of any contract to the contrary, an agent is entitled to retain goods, papers, and other property, baggage, and effects. Just playing. Don't say that. Retain goods, papers, and other property, whether movable or immovable, going back to the transfer of property of the principal received by him until the amount due to himself for commission, disbursements, and services in respect of the same has been paid or accounted for to him. 222. Agent to be indemnified against consequences of lawful acts. The employer of an agent is bound to indemnify him against the consequences of all lawful acts done by such agent in exercise of the authority conferred upon him. 223. Agent to be indemnified against consequences of acts done in good faith, where one person employs another to do an act and the agent does the act in good faith, the employer is liable to indemnify the agent against the consequences of that act, though it causes an injury to the rights of third persons. 224. Non-liability of employer of agent to do a criminal act. Non-liability. Damn, that's not good. I just invoked my unalienable rights. Where one person employs another to do any act which is criminal, all crimes are commercial, the employer is not liable to the agent. Either upon an express or implied promise to indemnify him against the consequences of that act. 225. Compensation to agent for injury caused by principal's negligence. The principal must make compensation to his agent in respect of injury caused to such agent by the principal's neglect or want of skill. 226. Enforcement and consequences of agents' contracts. Contracts entered into through an agent and obtained arising from acts done by an agent may be enforced in the same manner and will have the same legal consequences as if the contracts had been entered into and the acts done by the principal in person. Like you didn't just disrespect me in my face, brother. 227. Principal. How far bound? When agent exceeds authority. When an agent does more than he is authorized to do, and when the part of what he does, which is within his authority, can be separated from the part which is beyond his authority, so much only of what he does as is within his authority is binding as between him and his principal. Man. 228. Principal not bound when excess of agent's authority is not separable. When an agent does more than he is authorized to do, and what he does beyond the scope of his authority cannot be separated from what is within it, the principal is not bound to recognize the transaction. Hmm. 229, consequences of notice given to agent. Any notice given to or information obtained by the agent, provided it be given or obtained in the course of the business transacted by him for the principal, shall, as between the principal and the third parties, have the same legal consequences as if it had been given to or obtained by the principal. Pardon me, my mouth getting dry. Uh, 230, agent cannot personally enforce nor be bound by contracts on behalf of the principal. I got some coffee still here. Yeah. Excuse me. 130, agent cannot personally enforce nor be bound by a contract on behalf of the principal. In the absence of any contract to that effect, an agent cannot personally enforce contracts entered into by him on behalf of his principal, nor is he personally bound by them. Presumption of contract to the contrary. Such a contract shall be presumed to exist in the following cases. 1. Where the contract is made by an agent for the sale or purchase of goods for a merchant resident abroad. Where the contract is made by an agent for the sale or purchase of goods for a merchant resident abroad. 2. Where an agent does not disclose the name of his principal, and where the agent, 3, where the agent, though disclosed, cannot be sued. 231, rights of parties to a contract made by agent not disclosed. If an agent makes a contract with the person who neither knows nor has reason to suspect that he is an agent, his principal may require the performance of the contract. But the other contracting party has, as against the principal, the same rights as he would have had as against the agent, if the agent had been the principal. If the principal discloses himself before the contract is completed, the other contracting party may refuse to fulfill the contract. If he can show that, if he had known who he was the principal in the contract, or if he had known that the agent was not a principal, he would not have entered into the contract. Man, I wouldn't even done that, man. If I would have knew that. 232, performance of contract with agents supposed to be principal. Where one man makes a contract to another, okay, as their power of attorney, with that passport, all fingerprints, attesting witnesses. You got to go back to the Registration Act. It's going to tell you how to do that. Where one man makes a contract with another, whether knowing nor having reasonable ground to suspect that the owner is an agent, the principal, if he requires the performance of the contract, can only obtain such performance subject to the rights and objections or obligations subsisting between the agent and the other party to the contract. Can only obtain such performance subject to the rights and obligations subsisting between the agent and the other party to the contract. 233. right? A person dealing with agent personally liable. In cases where the agent is personally liable, a person dealing with him may hold either him or his principal or both of them liable. Man, I'm gonna hold you personally liable, bro. 234. Consequence in inducing agent or principal to act on belief that principal or agent will be held exclusively liable. When a person who has made a contract with an agent induces the agent to act upon the belief that the principal only will be held liable, every contract, or induces the principal to act upon the behalf that the agent only will be held liable, he cannot afterwards hold liable the agent or principal respectively. Oh, whoa. 235. Liability of pretended agent. A person untruly representing himself to be the authorized agent of another and thereby inducing a third person to deal with him as such agent is liable if his alleged employer does not ratify his acts to make compensation to the other in respect of any loss or damage which he has incurred by so dealing. 236. Falsely contracting as agent not entitled to perform. Pretty much they talking about like theft. Pretty much, right? Like if you try to a scam, like if you try to use somebody else's stuff. That's kind of where I'm getting off from it. Person falsely contracted as agent not entitled to perform, and also like people acting on your behalf on the other side, maybe too, in the business. You know, they do have your signatures and stuff. But where I was, well, I do 236 again. Person falsely contracting as agent not entitled to perform. A person with whom a contract has been entered into in the character of agent is not entitled to require the performance of it if he was in reality acting not as agent but on his own account. 237. Liability of principal inducing belief that agents unauthorized acts were authorized. When an agent has, without authority, done acts or incurred obligations to third persons on behalf of his principal, the principal is bound by such acts or obligations if he has by his words or conduct induced such third persons to believe that such act and obligations were within the scopes of the agent's authority. 238. Effect on agreement of misrepresentation or fraud by agent. Misrepresentations made or frauds committed by agents acting in the course of their business for their principals have the same effect on agreements made by such agents as if such misrepresentations or fraud had been made or conducted or committed by the principals. But misrepresentations made or frauds committed by agents in manner which do not fall within their authority do not affect their principles. That's pretty much it, brothers. And then, we till here. And I don't even, I don't have to do a whole nother part to them. So this is chapter 11 of ownership. 239 through 266. Probably rep by the Indian Partnership Act, 1932. 9 of 1932, Section 73, and Schedule 2. Schedule, and it says schedule, the schedule enactments repealed by the Repealing and Amending Act, 1914, 10 of 1914, Sec. 13, and Schedule 2. That's it. Net reading, was the Indian Contract Act of 1870, right? 1873, 1870, somewhere around there, right? 1872, 1872, 1872, 1872. Then I can come right here to these documents and which one it was, the contract. Maybe I didn't do, Contract Act notes. I didn't already take notes. But some prominent points and definitions and stuff. But, I realize. Could it be? Could it be?